Welcome to Community Kind, a 100 Women podcast. I'm Karen Brittain, Executive Officer of 100 Women, and I'm so incredibly happy you're joining us for this very first episode. Today, I'm sitting down with someone who has been living the life of a change maker since she was just 12 years old, our co-founder, Alicia Curtis. Alicia is a true force for good. From attending children's conferences to co-founding her very own children's conference, and to being named one of Australia's 100 Women of Influence, she has spent her life challenging the idea of who gets to be a leader. In 2013, she took that same spark and co-founded 100 Women, driven by the belief that you don't have to be wealthy to be a philanthropist. You just need a community behind you. In this episode, we're going back to where it all began, the story of how a simple car ride and a shared vision turned into a movement that has now gifted almost $1.7 million to women and girls in need. Whether you've been with us for years or you're just hearing about 100 Women for the very first time, this conversation is about the pure joy that happens when we decide our money can do more together than it ever could alone. I'm really glad you're here for this one, Alicia. Welcome to the show.
Oh, it's so lovely to be here.
The show that we will be co-running together. You're our very first guest today, but we're looking forward to sharing this podcast series with quite a few of our grant recipients over the last 13 years. So, Alicia, let's go back to where this all actually started. What were you and Megan talking about on that car ride back when you were just, in your early 20s?
Late 20s. So Megan's a really great friend of mine. We had volunteered a lot through Millennium Kids, a youth environment organisation, together. We were actually running a youth leadership workshop out in a regional area. And so we had a long car ride back into Perth, and we were very used to the concept of talking about new ideas and how you can make them happen. And that's the work that we were doing in Millennium Kids together and the youth workshop that we were running out in the regional areas, talking to young people about that we all have this opportunity to look around us, to think about what we love about our community, what we don't like about our community, and how we can make our community a better place. So we were just talking about ideas. We were spitballing. We were passing the time in the car and sharing our latest ideas to make the world a better place. And I had been thinking about the idea of 100 Women for, quite a few months, it might have even been quite a few years. And it reminds me of the quote that nothing is more powerful than an idea whose time has come, because it really, there's a lot of hard work and effort that comes with, making an idea reality, but there's also a lot of luck too. And just realizing that sometimes your idea has it's time for an idea to happen. And that's really what it was when I was talking to Megan about the idea of 100 Women, because we'd always been on the other side of the fence of writing grant applications, getting money in to make ideas happen. But I thought, wouldn't it be amazing to have our own grant fund that we could give? And at that stage, I was reading a lot, and I've always been passionate about our support of women in our community, more at a leadership level and ensuring that women have access to the tables where decisions get made, and have the opportunity to step up as leaders. But I'd read a book called Half the Sky, which really gave me a really different perspective, that unless women have access to the basics, they're never going to get to, leadership positions and opportunities to make decisions. If we don't give them opportunities, just the basic opportunities of health, education, economic opportunities and safety. So we were talking about what would it be like if we could bring people together and all put in a small amount of money to have our own grant fund that then we could invest in projects that were really, truly making a difference in our community.
That's brilliant. What's come out of that is that one little conversation just goes to show that you should always be talking about ideas. So you became a volunteer very young. Can you tell me who or what inspired you to take this path so passionately?
Yeah, I suppose my family hadn't had sort of much involvement in philanthropy per se, but my dad was an active community citizen. You know, he'd run different clubs and we'd go out. He was part of Rotary. We'd go out fundraising for Rotary. I remember, you know, selling raffle tickets and all those sorts of things, planting trees with his Rotary club. My mum also really instilled in me the importance of having a voice and not being afraid of using your voice. But I suppose the moments that was really a catalyst in my life was attending a children's conference run by the United Nations on the environment. And I got to be part of this conference that was held in England that had 800 kids from 90 different countries that attended. And so you can't go to an event like that and not just be awestruck by the potential that every single one of us has to create the community that we want. And it really showed me from a young age that you can make ideas happen. It doesn't necessarily you don't need to be rich and famous to make them happen. You can just be, you know, an ordinary everyday person to make things happen. But you do need supporters, collaborators, and a team to make things happen.
Excellent. And was there a specific moment when you thought this could actually work? And what did that feel like? Because we all get ideas, but not many people have the capacity to make it happen, I guess. So what drove you to actually really go through with this idea?
You need collaborators, right? So for me, it was like I had this idea, but it wasn't until I talked to Megan, and Megan sort of said, yeah, we could do this.
Reinforced it.
Yeah, having somebody, you know, just say, yeah, we can do this together. That was the first moment. I think then we put it out on social media, you know, like any great Gen Y. we shared this idea on social media, and the response was immediate. It was, wow, love this idea. How can I sign up as a member? We hadn't even started, and people were like, this idea, there's something about this idea. And we brought together the first committee from that social media post, and there was a buzz. You know, we were just a group of young women in our, you know, late 20s, early 30s. We had never really been involved in something of this scale, but together we had the different expertise, the different pieces of the puzzle that we could bring together to create something like this. And so when there's that buzz of possibility, it really, there's nothing that can stop that. And it's just continued every single year. Every single year, the right people come to the table, the right opportunities come to allow us to keep building this idea to what it is today and what it could look like in the future.
So you've said that collective giving puts philanthropy within reach of anyone. What do you mean by that?
So collective giving was really quite a new concept when we first started. It was just really the emergence of this opportunity of people coming together, pooling their funds for a common purpose, and then carefully considering where that money went in alignment to the values and purpose that the organisation has. So I saw the opportunity for us to be able to bring people together that had a passion for women and children, women and girls. They saw the benefit of the investment in women and girls. And really, it was at a time where I thought, the more I explored philanthropy, I realised philanthropy as a concept almost got hijacked by the rich and famous.
So true, so true.
You think of the word philanthropist, you think of, you know, somebody who's, you know, maybe a rich business owner who's giving away their millions of dollars, and it really made philanthropy as a concept out of reach of the everyday person. And so what I loved about this concept of collective giving was that it puts it in everybody's reach. And when you look at the real or the root word or the meaning of the word philanthropist, it's actually lover of humanity, which, It's your everyday person who wants to make a difference. And so, collective giving really gives us the opportunity to come together in our giving and amplify the impact that we can have together.
So 100 Women in its entity, I guess, we have an entry point of around $300, but you can give as much as you want. As I understand it, working within 100 Women, one of the most beautiful benefits of that is that the member has a say in where that funding goes. What do you think that means for the members?
We come at it together. And, it doesn't matter whether you give $300 or $1,200, whatever a step up is for you. I encourage people to be, to challenge themselves around their thinking around how they can give. Oftentimes we can think that even, $300 or even $1,200 might be out of our reach. And I must admit, when I first started 100 Women, $1,200 was a huge step up for me in my giving. Giving $100 a month was a huge step up. But, when we got together that initial committee of young women, we were like, oh gosh, we've got to ask people to give $100 a month, $1,200 a year. It felt big for people. But then we started breaking it down. And as you say, $300 is really a coffee a week. We all get to make choices about how we can use our time, our talents, our money to make the difference that we want to make in this world. And now thinking back to how much of a difference that money has made through our grant recipients, there's no better way I can think of spending that money than donating to 100 Women.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And the fact that 100% of that donation is going to our grant recipients, and it's a full tax deduction as well. It's
Absolutely.
A very clever way of just really making a difference in the lives of women and girls that you've never met before. It's such a feel-good lifestyle choice, I think.
There's such a deep personal joy that comes from giving together. And not only that personal joy, it also then translates into this collective joy when you see the impact that your money has made together. You listen to the stories of our grant recipients and you see what's possible. You come together with this community and it gives you this immense amount of pleasure to be a part, to belong to something that's bigger than yourself.
I love it. And it brings me back to, I guess, the origins of how I joined 100 Women. So I've been with you for 4.5 years now, but back in 2014, which was the very first grant round, the inaugural grant round for 100 Women, I worked at a women's refuge called Zonta House Refuge Association. And our CEO was lucky enough to meet you back then when you had just pulled together a small group of women. And at that point, you didn't really even know how many members you were going to bring on board at that point, starting it makes me not knowing.
It makes me laugh because, we launch at the start of the year in March. We really don't have a clue how many people will join us. We start the grant making round.
Yeah.
before we've got, all the money in the bank. But I just think that sometimes it's naivety, sometimes it's just this courage to see through on a vision that you have. And, we were so lucky to have, right from the beginning, incredible organisations putting up projects that were exactly what we were looking for, both here, locally in Perth, regionally, and then right across the world as well. But Zonta House was an incredible project and showed exactly what we were trying to do. And so many of the projects that we've been able to fund show that there is this gap in being able to believe in projects that support women and girls in particular, and give them the seed funding to show what they can do and the impact that they can have in their community, which has been the golden thread that's continued to this day. So it's wonderful to think back on those first few years.
It was. I think, knowing what 40,000 did for Zonta House when I was there, to be on the flip side to know as a representative of that charity what that did for the women that we were supporting through the Positive Pathways program. It was phenomenal. And to think that, this started with just 8 women on your board with amazing different skill sets that just made this come to fruition. And in that first year, you gave away $100,000 to 3 different charities combined. It was, just incredible. So is there a project or story, or maybe we can have a little bit of a chat about some of the ones that pops to our mind when we think and talk about the incredible impact that 100 Women's grants have on the charities that we support?
Yes, I know. I said to you, Karen, it's almost too hard to be able to pinpoint.
I'm with you.
One grant or a couple of grants out of now the 49 that we've been able to fund. There's this golden thread of this incredible opportunity that we see when we invest in women and girls in different ways. We've had so many great local projects like Zonta House. We've had so many great regional projects of, as we're saying, having seed funding to be able to share with them, to be able to showcase the good work that they know that they can do. Earbus comes to mind, when we're funding Aboriginal health professionals to go and support kids that are having, hearing problems and the health challenges they're facing in regional areas.
They have a mobile bus that goes to
Literally
those regions.
goes,
Yeah.
the Earbus goes out.
Yeah.
And it's, the simple things like helping a kid hear then has the ripple effects of them actually being able to attend school, be engaged at school, not be trouble at school because they can't hear. The ripple effects are immense. The same with Telethon Kids Institute. They have incredible health projects that they're doing right across WA, but we were able to fund local Indigenous elders, women elders in their community to be able to do the on-the-ground health support required around one of their projects. And they understood, and through this project was able to understand even more deeply that when you bring in the community, the health research gets better, right? So we've got to be place-based. We've got to invest in women in their own local communities. And then I was able to go to Cambodia last year with one of our members, Trina Sunday, and I got to meet some of our local projects in Cambodia. Cambodia is one of the places that we've actually funded the most outside of Australia.
Yes, 5 times, yeah.
So it's been on my radar to go, okay, I want to hear more. I want to know more about this country, learn more about the people there and the issues that they're facing. And so it was really so heartwarming to actually get to meet these people face to face, getting to meet Ozcam in Phnom Penh, and hear of the work that they are doing to support young girls that are facing, some really tough times in their life, and to be able to come up with project ideas that are so effective in being able to provide support. And then in Siem Reap, getting to meet some of our projects there, from Human and Hope to Free to Shine. Again, we're talking about pretty dire, pretty serious issues like sex trafficking, women coming into those situations. But, I was telling you before, sometimes it's about really understanding the bigger picture with some of those projects, because, going and listening to them and hearing their stories, you start to realize the gravity of the challenges that some of these people face. A lot of people still living in poverty in Cambodia. So even access to health and education is really challenging, and can actually really leads on to why we're having issues around trafficking.
You mention often over the years around acknowledgement of privilege. So can you talk us through about how that kind of changed your perspective in working with these charities, especially because we're one of the few giving circles or collaborative giving funds that do support international projects? Can you talk to us about what privilege means with a local, global lens?
Yeah, look, I think one of the things that surprises me most with collective giving is that, yes, we can make a huge impact to the recipients, but it also changes you as a giver. Your knowledge of these issues opens your eyes. And I think it comes back to that book, Half the Sky, that I read. And the thing that stood out for me while reading that book, and, that's a really well-known book that really documented the discrimination to death that women still faced around the world. And so that was, 14, 15 years ago.
Be prepared to cry. It's a full-on book to read. So at the quiet space and a cup of tea whenever you're reading that book, because it really does open your eyes, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And so when we talk about privilege, I sat down and read that book, and I had this overwhelming feeling like, gosh, I would never let some issues like this happen to my sister, to my mother, to my daughter. And I just had this feeling of like, why do we allow this still to happen? These are choices that each and every one of us does make, as a community, as a government, as part of, our workplaces. These are choices that we're making. So it starts with that choice, that decision. And so you can either sit and let status quo continue to happen, or you can go, right, what can I do? And I'm not a rich millionaire, but I can come together and I can choose to put $100 a month towards something like this, and to give my time and my voice and bring my community along with me to make one little project happen that makes the world a better place for another person. That's the ripple effect where it starts. And realizing that, we all have some privilege to be able to do something, whether it's giving money, giving time, but it starts with that choice.
Well said. So 100 Women is now operating in Perth, Sydney and Brisbane. And when you dreamed this up on the car ride, did you ever imagine it would grow this way?
Well, it's funny because we were definitely initially focused on bringing 100 women together to be our initial members and investors, donors into 100 Women. In the initial years, we realized that there was so much more potential for this, and it really, 100 Women now has become the analogy of what happens when you bring people together. When you make that change, when you come together, the collective, the power of the collective. And so it's been really incredible to see from those, photos of us coming together for our strategic planning sessions and putting up on butcher's paper that we wanted to be Australia-wide, that we wanted to bring together men and women together. That's all starting to happen. And it really just shows you what can happen when you bring people together for, a greater purpose.
And people can volunteer as well, not just joining as a member. There is just this really holistic nature of giving back. Tell us a bit more about that.
Oh, well, we've always been volunteer-led, right? For many years, we were fully volunteer-led, but, our organisation doesn't happen without volunteers. When we talk about the change-making process, money is one part, but volunteers are another. And, I've been so lucky to be a volunteer for most of my life and to understand the true joy of volunteering. And so when people come and volunteer for 100 Women, they understand that joy, that they are playing a part in creating the change that we see through our grants. Yes, it's about your dollars, but it's also about bringing people together to give their skill sets, to share it with their communities, bring people along with them on the journey. We are a group that has spread through word of mouth mostly. And so it depends on each and every one of our volunteers, our members, being an advocate for what we do.
And so for someone who's never heard of 100 Women, they'll know a little bit more now after this podcast or looking on our website. But what's one thing that they can take away from this conversation today?
I want them to understand the power that you have to create change. You have more power than you think to create a world that's safe and equitable. And I think, now more than ever, when I read that book, I had that feeling of like, gosh, can things ever change? what's happening in our world. And I think a lot of people are thinking and feeling that right at this moment. You know, we've seen the rollback of rights of women happening before our eyes. And we have two choices. Comes back to that choice. We can say, nothing will ever change. Or we can say now more than ever, we need to come together. We need to bring people together because we all, each and individually and collectively, have more power than we think. And when we do that together, more things happen for the better. And when more things happen for the better, we start to make inroads in the world that we want. And whether you're here in Perth, you're in Sydney or Brisbane or out in Karratha, we all have that potential to come together. And it's so incredibly rich and heartwarming for me to see that no matter where they are around Australia, that people get it. We're bringing together the most incredibly talented people, passionate about their communities, who understand the impact that we can achieve when we come together. We don't need any heroes on white horses anymore to come and save us. What we need is everyday people coming together as a collective to make a choice to support women and girls, because we know that that is the way that we can bring whole communities together above, out of poverty, increase outcomes for everyone. Whole families, whole communities can come from when we invest strategically in women and girls.
Alicia, thank you very much for all you've done for the 39,500 women and girls, but also for all of the members and the communities that have benefited from the work that Megan and yourself did in those early days, and along with the original women that came on board, but all of the incredible volunteers that have come on board to support the work of 100 Women, and to all of these incredible grant recipients and grant applicants that believe in the work that we're doing and that we believe in the work that they are achieving as a result of this program. Congratulations, Alicia, on all you've achieved.
Oh, look, I just want to underscore the fact that this is a collective. This is much more than any one person. And it's the blood, sweat and tears of many different volunteers and each and every one of our members. And I often think each and every one of them is a co-founder of this organisation. We're all co-founders of this concept that continues to build. And I think we've only just scratched the surface of what we can achieve.
Thanks, Alicia. Thanks for joining us. The conversation you heard today, the car ride, the book, the moment when two women decided to try something, that's exactly what 100 Women is. It's what happens when everyday people decide to do something extraordinary together. 100 Women is a giving circle. Every member contributes as little as $300 a year. With 400 members currently across the nation, together that becomes $200,000 or more, which is granted directly to grassroots organisations supporting women and girls in health, education, safety and economic opportunity. Every member gets a vote on where that money goes, and every dollar stays in the community. And the circle itself, the people in it, are part of something that has now given away more than $1.69 million over 12 years. If today's conversation has made you curious about whether this might be something for you, we'd love to hear from you. You can find out more about joining our giving circle at 100women.org.au. The link is in the show notes. And thank you for listening to Community Kind. Alicia and I will be back to interview some more of our grant recipients doing incredible work in the communities that they exist around the world. We'll see you soon. Thanks, Alicia.
Can't wait.